Most people have no idea what hybrid training actually is. Some think that it's just going heavy on the squat, bench, and deadlift and doing a little endurance on the side. Others think that it's training for a marathon while doing bodybuilding programming at the same time. And then others think that it's just doing high intensity circuit training, metcons in the weight room every day or twice a day, and then just running like really high intensities as well. While technically all of these are some form of hybrid training is the most misunderstood concept that you can get into so much trouble with and be very unproductive with both strength and endurance, because it takes a very balanced approach and a nuanced approach of proper place and times, of emphasizing things and then de-emphasizing others. And there's a lot of things that you may be missing with your hybrid training. So if you're trying to improve your strength and endurance simultaneously, follow along, and I'm going to go over what hybrid training is and what it isn't. My loose definition of hybrid training is combining a good performance-based strength training program with traditional endurance training. Traditional endurance training is running, rowing, biking, rucking, anything that's just a traditional endurance modality where you're just doing one thing. So not circuit training in a weight room. That has a time and a place, but in order to do endurance training well, you need to have low intensity, which you cannot do with circuit training. So this is where the traditional endurance modalities comes in. If you really want to take a deep dive on zone 2 training or low intensity training, check out my long form video on that one. But when we combine these two, strength training and endurance training, we have to be somewhere in the middle for it to be hybrid training, in my opinion. Now, for example, runners, they still do strength training, but they just do a little bit. Their endurance bias, say, is 90% endurance bias and maybe 10% strength bias. They're doing just enough to avoid injury and to boost their running performance, but they often are not really strong or functional at all outside of just running in a straight line. And then the opposite is strength athletes, who still should do endurance training. Not all of them do, but the just general health benefits of a strength athlete that they can get out of just a little bit endurance can be game changing for their recovery. And they're going to be 90% strength bias, 10% endurance bias. So anything in the middle is a hybrid athlete, because they're trying to do both a little bit more than just being on one extreme. Tactical athletes, for example, probably right in the middle. They need to be lethal. They need to be strong. They need to be powerful. They need to move long distances. They need to be able to sprint. They need to do everything. Okay? Runners, in my opinion, unless you're just a professional that's getting paid to run, most of your year of training should involve more strength training than what the average runner should do, so that you're more functional, you're stronger, you avoid injury even more than the average runner. You can grow old without just becoming brittle and weak, okay? And strength training athletes, even if you're trying to really focus on powerlifting, strongman, things like that, you should do a little bit more endurance training than the absolute minimum, because your VO2 max and just your aerobic health in general can be game changing for your strength improvement. So we're going to talk a little bit more about these ratios though, because we can't just do both year round, and we have to decide what. Runners, I like to start higher in strength, and then as we incorporate endurance at a low intensity and start building volume, their endurance ratio keeps going up and up and up as the program progresses, and their strength ratio goes down and down and down. So maybe it starts at 50-50 strength to endurance, and then at the end, it's maybe 80-20. endurance to strength, so that it gets more and more biased so that we can peak for our endurance event as a runner. Where tactical athletes can go either way. Maybe they're going to SFAS or Ranger School or Best Ranger competitions. Those are very endurance heavy things, so we're going to treat them like a runner. Where he's maybe a deployment where they're not called to move super long distances while they still need to be able to have a strong endurance system, they're going to go the opposite way. Maybe far out from their deployment, they're going to focus a lot on endurance and just start working on strength. And then as they get closer and closer to their deployment, they're going to focus more and more on strength, speed, power, lethality, explosiveness. And then they're going to focus a little bit less on that endurance, and they're just trying to maintain endurance, and then they go on their deployment. So there's a time and a place for everything. What you want to focus on is just a recreational athlete that's not just a pure runner or a pure tactical athlete. That's up to you, as long as you're somewhere in the middle. But the key thing that I want you to understand is you can't just press on both gas pedals simultaneously and expect for you to just stay healthy and keep making progress on both. You have to have times where you emphasize one and de-emphasize the other, and then other times where you're going back and forth. And it takes a very calculated and nuanced approach to do this. So what hybrid training is not is, number one, it is not just traditional endurance plus bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is not designed to improve anything other than your muscle mass at the end of the day. And even, which isn't necessarily a bad thing when you're trying to reduce injury, just traditional bodybuilding, because it strengthens your tendons and your ligaments. The slow tempos and just excess muscle mass can really work against you. And it is also missing a lot of movements, which I'm going to go over at the end of this video, that are just going to help improve your performance outside of the weight room. So you don't have to get rid of bodybuilding altogether, but you have to add these things, so follow along, to your bodybuilding training to make it more functional. So also what hybrid training is not is powerlifting and traditional endurance training. Powerlifting is just pure absolute strength, squat, bench, and deadlift in a very rigid position. And in fact, if you really just focus on that too much and not enough quality performance-based strength training, exercises and strategies, it will reduce your performance outside of the weight room. You won't move well. You'll get injured just moving laterally or rotationally as a powerlifter because you don't do anything outside of just a rigid 2-foot solid stance position. But everything outside of the weight room is usually single-sided, single-legged, rotational, lateral, just moving in all sorts of different directions. Even running in a straight line, you're still rotating, taking lateral forces, landing on one leg. So again, stick around and I'm going to show you what's missing from these. And then lastly, what hybrid training is not is CrossFit. Okay? CrossFit, there is a time and a place for circuit training because that's what CrossFit primarily is. But a lot of people miss that those games athletes also combine it with traditional endurance training as well. And they just have 2 or 3 sessions a week where they're focusing primarily or exclusively on low intensity training. But CrossFit, circuit training is great. Let me clarify that. It is missing a lot of movements that are going to help you perform outside of the weight room and move better. So again, all 3 have value. I'm not trying to say that you just need to completely change your ideology of strength and you need to just stop doing the bodybuilding training that you enjoy or the powerlifting or the CrossFit training, because a part of exercise is mentally enjoying what you're doing. You can have the best program in the world that if you hate doing it, it's not going to work. So we need to just fine tune either our powerlifting, bodybuilding, or CrossFit training to make them transfer into outside of the weight room a little bit better and so that they are more functional. So some of the missing pieces that I include in all of my performance-based strength training programs, a lot of them I go over in a video that I released a while back. So check that out. It's how your strength training isn't improving your running. And it goes over a lot of great movements that it's going to get you started. But some things, so things like core work that's both lateral, rotational, calf strengthening exercises, foot strengthening exercises, hamstring strength. If you only are thinking that you're strengthening your hamstrings with a deadlift or a hip hinge, you are missing out on hamstring curls. So check out my favorite one in that YouTube video. They are missing hip isolation exercises. Your hip has 6 different actions: flexion, extension, lateral, abduction, lateral adduction, bring it in. It rotates internally and externally. And a lot of programs are missing this. It is missing single-sided unilateral movements like lunges, single arm presses, single leg RDLs, things where we are just isolating one side and loading up the body in a way that is similar to movement outside of the weight room. And one thing that you're not going to see in the other video is plyometrics. This is just speed and power, using your body weight to just jump, hop, skip, bound, things where you are being very quick and just being explosive. These really help with movement outside of the weight room. So in conclusion, hybrid training is not about being average at everything. It's just about being capable when it counts, whatever your goals are. So you don't have to just give up everything that you're doing, but you need to improve upon it so that it involves more performance-based strength training. And then you can just fine-tune it and turn it into a package that you enjoy. And if you check out my strength systems, I've got 3 big systems that can be a little bit appealing to any of those 3 different types of strength training ideologies, so that you can go from one to the other and change it up a little bit, but still know that you're doing performance-based strength training. You need strength training that carries over when it counts. And you need the endurance to keep on moving when others stop. That's what hybrid training really is. So train hard, live ready, embrace the process.